several clergy in Russia.
Was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the Karimun bread.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that, guys? Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the latest edition of Global Atheist News Review. And I have a usual panel of opinionated people, starting with Guy Otten from the Manchester zone of the UK, Tersia du Plessis from South Africa, Frank Lovell from Kentucky, USA, David Orenstein from Manhattan, New York, USA, and Esther the Afro-Humanist from the Midlands of the UK. Here we are all together, ready to take apart the news. So, item number 1. This is very sad. Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old Iranian woman. I think she's from the Kurdistan area of Iran, or the state of Kurdistan. And she was arrested by, you won't believe this, they have something called the morality police. It boggles my British mind, but apparently if you don't wear your scarf, and you're a woman, if you don't wear your scarf properly, I imagine that you let a lock of hair be visible or something, then you can be arrested. She was taken to a police van and beaten, and during that, her head fell against the side of the vehicle or something. She went into a coma, some brain damage, taken to a hospital, and died. Now, at her funeral, protests broke out. Some women removed their headscarves in protest at the compulsory wearing of hijabs. Now, can you imagine? This only applies to women. They're the victims in Iran and other fundamentalist Muslim states. Can you imagine what an outcry there would be if boys come of age were forced to wear some sort of weird headgear?
I mean, these immorality police, they appear if people are having parties. You know, young people in Iran like to have parties and dance together, but they have to do it in private, and they have to be careful not to make too much noise, because if the immorality police, we should call them, hear about it, they're there and they get arrested and beaten up, and you know, I mean, it's a range of things they're interested in. Apart from, and I think they're interested in sexual matters, of course.
Yeah.
But they're probably not interested in government corruption or anything like that.
No.
And I suspect that if there's sexual immorality, that the only people who would be punished would be women. If it happened to be a boy and a girl, or a young lady and a young man, then the only person who'd be punished would be the young lady, except, of course, if it were two men who happened to have some sort of immoral affair.
Yes.
And the only comment that I would, or not comment, it's more a statement. I told John and our guest of last night that the reason I'm wearing this weird hippie headband of mine is my very meager attempt to show solidarity with the women of Iran in particular at this time, because I chose to wear headgear that I can remove if I want to. I don't have to wear it, but it's my way of showing that I stand with the women of Iran. So if anybody wonders why I'm looking like a hippie, it's to show solidarity with the women of Iran.
You look like a gorgeous hippie, I would say, Tersia. For me, when I read the story, just thinking about the aftermath, they were saying, "Oh no, she died of a heart attack, or she died of," trying to excuse give other reasons why she died. But if she had not been arrested, she would still be alive.
Mhm.
So whatever the case, whatever the reasons for her death, if she was never arrested by these morality or rather immorality police, she would still be alive today. The fact that a country has a police set up for to go watch people's pieces of clothing, and and I think in her part, this is where this is very painful to me. It's not as though she wasn't wearing it at all. She
No.
was, but
Yeah.
just wasn't wearing it properly.
Yes.
Properly. Isn't that something? Isn't that heartbreaking?
Yes, absolutely.
It's more serious than that, though. In Iran, you say if she wasn't arrested, she wouldn't have been beaten. But it's possible to be arrested and not beaten. Happens every day in the United States, in the British Isles, in all kinds of countries. It's that if it's a woman who's breaking the morality rule, she can be beaten, and not beaten by due process, not after a trial where it's decided her punishment is she's going to get so many lashes, but beaten right then and there. That's okay to do. It's just extreme misogyny.
It all goes to the whole idea of in these very masculine states, the whole idea of honor killings, because that's what essentially this is. If you violate the male attitude on anything, it could be the hijab, it could be who you choose to care about, anything like that. You could be killed by a member of your family. You can be killed by these quote unquote morality police, which in a sense are roving bands of people who are almost self-identified as having the power to do these things. And it just doesn't happen in Iran. It happens all over the Middle East. It happens in the United States. It happens in India. Over and over again, you see this victimization of women because of religious violence. And this is just an outcome of male domineering patriarchy that is run amok with no social safeguard to say that this is not good. There are people in Iran right now who say she had it coming. That is the culture. Although we look at it with aghast because we see it for what it is, which is a violation of women's rights, human rights, civil rights, and so on.
Freedom,
freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I'm going to screen a little video that the BBC made, which summarizes what happened at the event when she was arrested and beaten and died, and has happened since, because riots have broken out all over Iran now. All the cities have their squares absolutely full, teeming with people who are chanting words like "death to the dictator," and women are burning their hijabs, women are cutting their hair publicly and defying the morality laws that apply in this country. And one clip I've seen, we think he's a plainclothes morality policeman. He's got a motorcycle, but he goes over and he hits a woman. We don't know why, but we suspect that it's because her hijab was improperly adjusted or something. And he gets back on his motorcycle, but this is the important bit, he's pulled off it by about 5 blokes who beat him up in the street. And that hasn't happened before. So this is building up to something big in Iran. And maybe keep your fingers crossed, we might see a change of government. Take a look at this little clip. Why is it not playing? Huh. I'm sorry. Well, it's a shame that a woman had to die to prompt this. And it's even worse than that because 30 have been shot since by the government trying to clamp down and suppress this rioting. But who knows? Are we about to see a change of a regime in Iran?
Can I add that I have seen something positive come out of this? Some of the videos that I've seen, the men were standing there, hand in hand with each other, while the women were at the back, right, protesting. And these men have put themselves in the line of fire with the police and saying our women should be allowed to protest, right? To see the men standing up for the women, it gave me a lot of joy to see that.
Yes.
And at this point, men need to stand up in a society that has been ruled by the patriarchy, right? To see men actually saying no, our women have the right to protest and to burn the hijab if they wish to do so. Yesterday in my city in Birmingham here, they were protesting. The Iranians were out. They were protesting, right? And it was the men. They had flags. Because I went and had a chat with them. They had the flags, and they said that this flag, the one that they had with them, that flag was the flag before the Islamic rule, and they want to go back to their country being. They showed me the flag. I've got pictures of it, and so it looks like this is going to be an ongoing thing.
Persia. The previous name of the country was Persia. Yeah. And it was, am I right in thinking it was Birmingham's Gay Pride?
Yes. I was at Pride yesterday.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Okay, well, let's hope that something comes of that and that no more deaths have to take place for it to happen.
Yep.
So staying where we've just visited, we've been talking about Birmingham. I'm now going to move a little bit to the right of Birmingham, I think, and go talk about Leicester, another of our Midland cities, where you won't believe this. I mean, it's unbelievable. There was a cricket match between India and Pakistan at the beginning of this month, and it took place in Dubai, in the Arab, the Emirates, the United Arab Emirates, UAE. And these matches have to take place there because the last time they played in Pakistan itself, there was a shoot up of the team bus. And that was, I think, in about 2003. So they've always had to meet in the Middle East since then. But cricket is a big game in the subcontinent. It's the national game for India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and it's a matter for passion. You wouldn't believe it being, if you see cricket being played in this country, where it's a very genteel and delicate sort of activity, but over there it's as passionate as football is here. And what's happened is India won that match. And of course, India's been stirred up recently by Narendra Modi, who has done this is a common thing in the world at the moment, isn't it? Populist politicians who try to make two teams, two tribes, the with me and against me tribe. And we've seen it happen all over the world. So what he's done is he's antagonized the Muslims, and he's got the Hindus on his side. The young Hindu men have formed gangs that they are called the Hindutva, and they go about looking for trouble. And this is broken out, not in the subcontinent, not in Dubai, but in Leicester, where there are two communities, one of Hindus and one of Muslims. What do you think of that, guys?
Well, I mean, Leicester has been actually well known and perhaps a bit famous for having good community relations. For many decades. And I've heard some people say that maybe they've been a bit complacent. They haven't seen this coming. And others have said, oh, it's people from outside Leicester coming in. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But it has damped down now. And I think the community leaders have geared up and they know what to do. And they've come out together and said, no, stop this, And so that they've reacted correctly. But it is a bit bizarre, isn't it? And
it is.
Yeah.
But Leicester was very united recently, wasn't it? Because it won the FA Cup. I'm thinking the right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So from little I've heard in conversation with people, it was these Muslim group of people, and most of them were not from Leicester.
Yeah,
apparently they had put out something on social media, rallying each other to come over to Leicester and come and cause this trouble, whatever they did. A few names have since been identified. Some came as far as London. Some came from Birmingham. They had put out this call to themselves to come over to Leicester. Now, the Muslims say, no, it's the Hindus who started it. The Hindus say, no, it's the Muslims who started it. It's this back and forth. And when I was listening to these people have this conversation, I was thinking, this is why religion becomes a problem, because each religion thinks, okay, we've got to fight for ours, we've got to protect our own religion. The other one thinks we've got to. It was Christopher Hitchens that said, "Religion poisons everything." And I think I agree.
He wasn't wrong.
I was wondering whether if they were not the issue of one community being Hindu and the other community being Muslim, whether there would have been any violence at all, because both those communities would have just been immigrant communities. Immigrant communities, one originating from Pakistan, one originating from India, maybe, or Bangladesh, or wherever. So it's just so interesting how I see very little evidence, contrary to what Christians want to say, especially Christians. I don't see any evidence that religion is a force for uniting people.
No, not at all.
Many more instances of religion dividing people and partitioning people, and we're already inclined to tribe mentality. So
yes, absolutely.
So religion just plays into our innate tribalism. So instead of teaching us to work against the bad angels of our nature, to quote Steven Pinker. So religion just enhances those bad attributes that we have, instead of focusing on the good parts of our nature.
You're absolutely right. It's just a flag to assemble around, really, isn't it? Because long before we had different religious groups in the UK, we saw young men in pitched battles just because they liked doing it. You know, they were going about in their gangs looking for where the bundle was. And it was between the mods and the rockers. It was between the skinheads and whatever their opponents were. But religion, the reason that I don't like it is because it's an unnecessary tribal label. The other tribal labels might have some foundation. Religion doesn't.
Yeah.
I had a little rant then, didn't I? Sorry.
It's okay.
And usually you find in most religions, they are a blood cult. They won't stop until the quote unquote opponent is on their knees. And that is the ultimate violence for any religion that claims to be peaceful. I could show you, and I think everybody here can show you, dozens, if not hundreds, of religion-based acts of violence on the micro level and on the macro level to show that it's just a rallying cry to harm other people in the name of a deity. You have it here in the United States, even, and if we don't even want to talk about Christianity, we could talk about, quite frankly, the deification of Donald Trump. For many of his followers are now competing with Jesus Christ as the holy warrior, as the holy emperor.
Yeah, you have one here in the United States. There's two groups. One that regard Trump as the orange jackass, and the other group thinks of him as the orange Jesus.
Yes.
I mean, that's where we are.
Yeah. And it's all cults. You know, it's all violence centered on I can speak for my God. Because God, who's omnipotent and omnipresent, can't speak for themselves, right? I mean, if God really wanted to talk for him or her or their self, it would do it. You know, the entity would do it.
Yes, absolutely. And you think, being a creator of a universe, that wouldn't be beyond their capability.
Right. You wouldn't have laryngitis.
There's a very funny meme I've seen where there's a picture of Donald Trump and he's saying, I'll see Biden in jail. And then underneath there's a picture of Biden and Biden saying, why would Trump think I want to visit him when he's in jail?
Interesting. I think someone was telling me that some people now have a religion, a Trumpism.
Yeah.
I don't know how true this is.
There was a self-published book that has been made into a meme all over the internet about this guy comparing Trump to Jesus. Trump himself has labeled himself the chosen one in recent speeches he's taught. It's the idea, because that's how cults work, right? And he's a cult leader, is the idea of deification and unchallenging him. I mean, Jim Jones did it. They all wind up doing it. And we know the art of something like that. It never ends nicely.
No, indeed.
Well, another wacko at Mar-a-Lago.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Well, the next item is something that Frank pointed me to more recently. And you may remember that back in August, Global Atheist News reported on an Israeli attack where 50 Palestinians were killed, including 17 children, and about 360 people were injured. And it was described as a preemptive strike because the Palestinians hadn't initiated anything. This was the Israelis trying to get their thrust in first, and the response of the Palestinians was to lob a few rockets towards the Israeli positions. So they're claiming that they were doing it backwards. In other words, the Israelis are claiming that they're responding to aggression, and in fact, it was the other way around. Well, now, what's interesting about this is a Jewish group in Germany has filed criminal charges against the Israeli Prime Minister and their defense minister, because they say this bombardment was a crime. It wasn't provoked. And they're doing it from Germany because Germany supplies weapons to Israel. So the Jews in Germany are trying to get some recompense through their own courts. That's interesting, isn't it?
Well, it is. And the thing, traditionally, and for decades, we here in the United States regard Israel as being cautious where the Palestinians aren't. Palestinians just launch rockets without targets into the Israeli settled areas. But Israel uses precision and aims specifically, and sometimes gives them a heads up in 1 hour and a half, we're going to blow up that building. And this event that just happened, that's very different from that. That's Israelis acting like Palestinians. And it is a big mistake to do that. And I'm impressed that there are Jews outside of Israel that recognize that and are saying, wait, no, foul, because if the Israelis start acting like Palestinians act toward Israel, then they're going to lose my support, and a whole lot of other people's support.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Something that interests me about the whole Israeli-Palestinian issue is how ignorant many, let's call it Westerners, I know South Africans and I think many Americans, don't see the distinction between Israelis and Jews. They see it as the same entity, which it is in fact it is. Most Israelis are actually not religious.
Right.
So, and I think many traditional Western Christians confuse the issue because they don't know the history in the first place, and secondly, they don't know that there's absolutely no connection between what they read about in the Bible when they read about the Exodus and Moses, assuming that did happen. There's no connection between the biblical history and the modern state of Israel. And I think there's a load of ignorance that needs to be addressed, and Western countries have, to a large extent, not informed the populace what the real history is and the real state of affairs is, and it all boils down to economic issues, because the modern state of Israel, I know it's much more complicated, but to a great extent it boils down to the West that wanted to control a part of the Middle East and the oil in the Middle East after the end of the Second World War. So that's something that bugs me about Christians standing with Israelis or with Israel when there's no connection there.
Yeah. Well, it is a hornet's nest that's been bubbling along for 2,000 years, and I don't see any immediate success in curing it.
No, it's like in the United States you have, and you have this with a lot of different groups, and there are groups like Jewish Voice for Peace that try to work interheritagely, interculturally, to try to bring some semblance of order or understanding through communication, and those are all wonderful things. But you're looking at, John, as you said, at basically in the United States, they have this, and maybe you've heard of this, the Hatfields and the McCoys, You've got these people that have been in this particular area for 5,000 years, making heritage claims over the same areas that as Bedouins, whether they were Jews or Arabs, have been claiming for 5,000 years. And all you're doing in the modern sense is seeing it through the kaleidoscope of religion, land, geopolitics. And when in reality, it really comes down to this tribal issue of
exactly.
because it used to be who was here first, and now it's like, well, whose God was here first? And of course, since there really isn't a God, it all comes down to land claims and everything. But it's sad on both sides when you see any type of violence, because anybody who's perpetrating violence or vengeance is not thinking rationally, and I don't think that there's a lot of rationality amongst either side, on Hamas's side or the ultra-right Israeli side, and when you throw in the evangelicals, as you mentioned, who are pro-Israel, not for the sake of Israel, but that's where they think the Messiah is going to come, so they better support the Jews. It's a mess.
Absolutely. Well, Shakespeare was writing about this sort of tribalism in Romeo and Juliet 500 years ago. It's not going to go away in the short term, is it? But on the subject of the evangelicals, did you know that today is actually Rapture Day?
Yes.
So up we go, guys.
Right.
Wait, hang on. What do you mean, Rapture Day?
Some sect says that today is Rapture. I almost wasn't going to show up and just put on where it says David Orenstein. I was going to say Rapture.
But the day is not over yet, so it could still happen later.
Still time.
Yes.
Well, I was telling my brother that this. I don't know how many times we would have had the rapture, and each time I hear about the rapture, look, I don't have much hope of me being raptured up to heaven. And if I do get there, that I know that I will drive God insane so quickly that He'll just send me back. But I actually have a list of people that I really, really want to be raptured. I can put some South African politicians up there, some international politicians. One starts with a T, the other with a P. There's a lot of people that I'd like on my list, and I'd really like to see them raptured, because I don't think we need them. But obviously, God doesn't agree with me, so no.
I have a plan. I have a plan for the rapture.
Tell us.
Yes. So I'm definitely not going to be raptured. That's okay. It's not going to happen. So I have a plan for afterwards.
Okay.
So my plan is in the city where I live in, I know where the best homes are. I know where the ones, some of the people with the best cars around here. So if they're raptured, my plan is to run straight there. And any home where they've been raptured, I just hop in there and take ownership, and just take ownership of their cars, take ownership of their home, take ownership of everything, change my name to their names. How about that? Because they're not going to need all these things for where they're going, but I do need them. So that's my little plan when the rapture happens. So when the rapture happens, you might see me come out in I think the Maybach. That's the cars.
I've just amended my my Facebook bio to include Rapture Survivor.
I just wonder, when this rapture happens, I have a very visual imagination. So I'm wondering, are the people going to be taken up naked, and we're just going to see their clothes sort of lying in little heaps on the ground?
That's a good question.
And we're going to see these people fly up into the skies naked,
Good question.
I'm just wondering about that. Can you imagine?
Because they don't need their bodies up there.
No, I'm bothered.
I hope they take the bodies with. I mean, can you imagine all the rotting meat that we're going to be stuck with if all the bodies stay behind and just the souls go up? I mean, that's going to be
no.
problematic.
Yeah. I don't like the smell of that. So you reminded me, talking about taking over some of the empty houses and Maybachs, Esther. You reminded me of a thing I read on Twitter today, because we've just had a mini budget, as you know, in which most of the money given away has gone to the rich people. So this little tweet says something along the lines of, I saw a homeless man on the street today. So I did what any humanitarian would do. I went to the nearest private estate. I found the biggest mansion, and I put a tenner through their letterbox because I know that some of that will trickle down to that homeless man.
Lovely. Brilliant. I like it.
Anyway, back to the drawing board here, or back to the grindstone. I'm not sure which. Belgium bishops, they want to, you're not, if you're a bishop, a Catholic bishop, you're not allowed to bless or marry gay couples. So the Belgian bishops have worked out a way around this. They've published a proposed text for a prayer liturgy for same-sex couples. It includes prayers, scriptural readings, and expressions of commitment, but it isn't a blessing. It's not a marriage. They call it a moment of prayer. No, by no means akin to a sacramental marriage. So they're trying to get away with that. And of course, the Pope's not having any of it. What do you think about that, guys?
It's not going to fool anybody.
As a Protestant, I just have to jump in here and remind, I'm not sure about the Anglicans, but the proper number of sacraments, there's supposed to be only 2. And the only 2 acceptable sacraments, it's the baptism and the Eucharist, or the meal. And just to have 7 sacraments like the Catholics do, that is wrong in itself. So really, I mean, that's the first thing that needs to be put to rights. So I don't know how many sacraments exist in the Anglican Church, but there should be only 2. So the Roman Catholics are way off the mark in the first place to begin with. As a Protestant, I just have to put that out there.
I thought you were an atheist, Tersia.
Well, I'm a Protestant atheist.
Yeah, me too.
But I mean, doesn't this point up the distorted reality? The distorted morality that religion, promotes through their sort of antiquated, so-called revealed commands of morality. That's basically what it comes down to. And you think, oh, for goodness sakes, why do any gays go near the church? That's what I don't.
That's what I was going to ask as well. Yeah, I was just, especially since I mean, they have to do a civil ceremony, or they have to, as far as I understand, marriages in Belgium probably would have to be civilly registered in any case. So to have the legal binding contract, you don't need the church. So why do they? You know?
Well, I'm coming on to that because this very week we had an amazing event. Our colleague in these panels, these debates here, actually carried out, D.P. Higgs I'm talking about, Dread Pirate, he actually carried out the very first Pastafarian marriage in British Columbia. So, I mean, give him a round of applause, eh?
Yeah, raw man.
Saying that, I just finished my course to be a humanist wedding celebrant.
Oh, well, brilliant! Yeah, another class.
I'll be able to. Were you?
Yeah, I was for 8 years. I finished a couple of years ago. I'm now a humanist chaplain.
Right.
Yeah, so well done, Esther. I'm really pleased to hear that. That's great.
Thanks very much. They'll be
Because
able to join godless people, godless, non-religious.
join them together,
People.
yeah.
There's a good
Yeah.
demand for it.
Yes.
And it's legal. So, moving back to the Jews, there's in the US of A, as I think David was talking a little while ago, there's various Jewish organizations, and one of them is the Jewish Electorate Institute, which describes itself as independent and non-partisan, but it's carried out a poll. And it's based on online interviews with 800 Jewish registered voters. And it shows that, you'll like this, Jewish voters lean overwhelmingly toward the Democratic Party. The poll found 70% of Jewish voters said they plan to vote for Democratic candidates, and only 24% said they're going to vote for Republican candidates. And what's prompted this is the reversion of Roe versus Wade. Because in Judaism, abortion is not only permitted, but it's sometimes required when the life of a pregnant woman is at risk. So that has caused them to change their allegiance to parties in the next forthcoming elections.
And we're counting on
Yeah,
them. Really. You know, we need all the votes we can get, all the rational votes we can get.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. If I don't remember the quote, but I'll see if I can try and figure it out. Something that says, when they came for the Jews, nobody was there to help.
Yeah.
When they came for the other groups, there's nobody to help because you didn't join in. But now they've come for you, but there's nobody to stand up for you, because when everyone else needed help, you were nowhere to be found, right? And this is the thing. It's when it gets to home, when it touches something that is close to home, then everyone wants to do something. You know, where were these voices before this Roe versus Wade was overturned? You know, where were these voices? Now, and now everyone wants to scramble. It's a good thing, don't get me wrong, but should we wait until things have finally the ceiling has hit the you guys know what I'm trying to say, when things become all bad, and should we wait?
It honestly didn't occur to us that this was going to happen.
Right.
We never imagined that the Supreme Court would undo something that had stood ground so long.
Yeah.
And it was a shocker for us. And it's going to be tough to change it back, but we just must get it done.
Yeah. You know, I'm sorry to step in, but Jews have always been, I think, on the political left in the United States for as long as I can remember. I mean, it was Jews who were marching with Dr. Martin Luther King in the 1950s and the 1960s, for the most part, and it's not a monolithic group, no group is, it's always been a very quote unquote democratic allied heritage group, and
secular.
And very secular. Yeah. I mean, you could see just in the United States, the number of people who are involved in the free thought movement. So many are, part of the Jewish heritage or whatever, myself included. I mean, ethnically, I'm one thing. I claim no religion, but I do understand my heritage, right? And from what I gather from my own informal conversations with people who are like me, is like, it's the fear that eventually, and you could see even in this movement, this alt-right movement, there are people screaming, "Jews will not replace us." You've got these people who yeah, they're going to come after several groups. They're going to come after, African Americans, Afro-Caribbeans. They're going to come after the LGBT community. They're going to come after the Jewish community. And so, the stronger these groups are allied together, and often it's the case, it's because of it's under the Democratic banner rather than the Republican banner.
Yeah. Well, staying with the US, there's a couple of interesting candidates. There's Doug Mastriano. He's currently a Pennsylvania state senator, but he wants to be governor of Pennsylvania on the Republican ticket. And he's had a habit of fusing religion and politics, giving voice to Christian nationalism, and deriding the notion of separation of church and state as a liberal fabrication. Back in 2020, he appealed to the Almighty to overturn the election results. He's a retired Army colonel, and he said that not all religions are created equal, meaning that Islam is not compatible with the Christian Judeo idea of the US Constitution. I never knew that. The US Constitution has a Christian Judeo idea. When did that happen? So there's him. And there's another one I want to tell you about too. He's even more outrageous. He's in Michigan, and he's a candidate for the US House of Representatives. He's backed by former President Donald Trump, and he is against having given women the right to vote, arguing that America has suffered since women's suffrage, which was about 100 years ago. So listen to what he said. When he was at Stanford University, he founded a society called the Critique for Feminism that argued women do not possess the characteristics necessary to govern because men are smarter and more likely to think logically about broad and abstract ideas rather than rely on emotional reasoning. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm glad that he said it, and we can now point to him saying it. We don't have to argue with people who said, hey, just listen to this guy.
Yeah.
You know who not to vote for. Yes.
Well, it reminds me back when there was it Governor Wallace in Alabama? The hippies who opposed him used to go into his meetings and stand at the back in hippie garb and say, "Right on, Wallace, go for it," and kind of taunt him that way. It sounds like a piss take.
Yes, it does.
Can it really be real? This guy,
Yeah.
what world is he living in?
Well, he's living in a world. From what I understand, he wrote all of these missives while he was in school, college, and it was meant to be disruptive and get under people's skin. In fact, his campaign has tried to block access to the stuff which has been taken down a long time ago because obviously it's controversial. But the reality is that nothing on the internet is really gone.
No.
And so, now that it's out there, it's coming back to bite him, even if he meant it as just, humor, or whether he meant it just to be a bane in the side of the liberal people on the campus. The fact of the matter is his stuff is out there, and it's coming back to bite him.
It's not going to go away.
Yeah.
So he's actually said, because he started this anti-feminist website, which was operated by the Christian Party, and he had a petition to repeal the 19th Amendment, which gave women the vote, and he said that was unconstitutional. The amendment was unconstitutional. I mean, it's in the Constitution that you can have amendments. What's he talking about? Anyway, we are running over our time, and I want to finish with a lighter item, because over there in Washington, D.C., you have a lady called Umfo Tutu van Firth, who is an Anglican, not evangelical, an Anglican priest in the Diocese of Washington. And her father was Bishop Desmond Tutu, that is somebody Tersia will know about. He was a big figure in South Africa up until his death not very many years ago. But this woman is now an Anglican priest, and she was invited to officiate at the funeral of her late godfather in Shropshire, England. But she's been banned by the Church of England because she's married to a woman. So the Episcopal Church, the American branch of Anglicanism, allows clergy to enter into gay marriages, but the Church of England, the parent of Anglicanism, doesn't.
Crazy. Absolutely
it's so sad because
crazy.
This is the daughter of Desmond Tutu, who was really such a nice man. He was just enlightened in that he stood up for the rights of minorities and for humanism, in fact, despite his religion. And the Anglican Church was a big supporter of the anti-apartheid fighters. So to do it's so hypocritical, and it's so deeply ironic that this would happen to a daughter of Desmond Tutu, you know. But once again, I don't know why any gay person would still have any kind of relationship with any form of Christian church, because the Bible is emphatic about being gay being an abomination. So I don't know how they get around that.
Yeah, the clue is in the Bible.
I think for me, it's this putting. Why do people's personal business come to play? What people do, what grown adults choose to do with their private parts, why does that concern a church? Why does that concern a God? And if you were to give this God the benefit of the doubt, this religion, this God has created these people this way. He has created them with these emotions that they have, the sexual tendencies. He's created them this way, but somehow has a problem when they express the emotions that he has given them. And now when it comes to it, you want to a very important part of your life, your dad's life. Now, what you do in the privacy of your bedroom now is someone's business. It's absolutely crazy. I know, and this is one of the reasons why I cannot choose religion. I just cannot do it.
Well, that's a good point to end on, I think. We'll let Esther have the last word, shall we? Like that. Guys, you've been wonderful. Thank you very much. See you again next week, I hope.
All right.
Hang in there.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Several clergy
Was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the Kali Umbrad.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that?